Today, we are gonna be making 30 freezer meal recipes. I use the term today loosely because this is probably gonna take us a couple of days. This is a massive project and it's January and things on the homestead are a little bit slow. So this is a great time for us to really stock up the freezer so that we save time and money in our busy season in the spring and aren't tempted to go out. So we are gonna have an absolutely jam-packed freezer when we are done with this. What are you most excited about making, Michaela?
Pizza.
Pizza? Yeah, the little individual lunch pizzas. What about you, Taylor?
Probably potato soup.
Oh, yes. How about you?
One of our freezer fit meals is meatballs that are covering up wads of cheese, and it's gonna be great. Meat and cheese, you can't go wrong, right?
I'm excited about gumbo, as always. We did a whole, back in the fall, we did a freezer meal, and you might have seen, that was all soups. And it was really great to have over the really cold, like fall, winter. And so we're taking a couple of things out of that and remaking them because they were really good to have on hand. So I'm excited about having the gumbo. But we've got all sorts of breakfast, lunch, dinners, desserts, all sorts of things lined up so that we can really stock our freezer. And I'm excited for y'all to come along on the journey. Let's get started. The first thing we always do with freezer meals that makes them a little bit faster to process through is to cut all the veggies and cook all the meat up front. It takes a little bit of legwork right at the very beginning, but it really does pay off dividends when you're doing batch after batch after batch after batch, because you can just scoop the chopped onions and scoop the potatoes or whatever. So this is one thing that it really does pay off. So we've got, I believe this is 26 pounds of beef that we're gonna brown in our Nesco roaster, and I'm just gonna set this, I'm gonna put this all in, and I'm gonna put it on 400 degrees, and we're gonna keep our eye on it. This will take quite a bit of time. 26 pounds is a lot to cook. And when we're done with this, we can throw the chickens in. And in the meantime, we've got, 20 pounds of potatoes to chop, 6 heads of garlic, celery, a few bunches of green onions, 2 bell peppers, 2 sweet potatoes, and 20 onions. So my sweet hubby volunteered to be the glutton. Yeah, be the glutton for punishment and chop the onions. And while we're chopping those, I've got some Italian sausage to brown, some smoked sausage to chop and brown, some bacon to go ahead and get in the oven. So several little things that we can get done ahead of time in batches so that when it comes time to put together the freezer meals, they come together a lot quicker.
All right, I'm about to go pull out some bowls. As I'm cutting these up, we'll keep the onions together, we'll keep the potatoes together. That way, like she mentioned, we can scoop out a half cup, and just go. The potatoes, because I'm gonna start peeling and slicing these, and they're just gonna have to sit around for a little while and wait their turn. To keep them from browning, which browning doesn't mean they've gone bad, by the way, but it does keep the aesthetics looking nice. I'm gonna not just throw them in a bowl, I'm gonna get a big pot, fill it with water, and just add a little bit of lemon juice. And then as we're cutting, we'll drop it right in there. The lemon juice won't make our potato soup taste lemony. It's just a little bit, and it'll be fine, but that will keep them nice and white looking, and we don't have that weird brown color that makes people go, oh, is that really okay? It is okay, but it looks nicer, so that's what we're gonna be doing with our potatoes.
And a lot of these recipes call for ground beef. As you can see, we have actually a lot of venison, and I always put in at least a few pounds of ground beef to give it a little bit more fat and things like that when I'm cooking a big batch together. So our freezer right now is full of deer meat because Taylor and Lance both got deer this deer season, which has been such a huge blessing. But we want to use that, so most of what we're doing for ground meat is actually venison, but it works just completely interchangeable pound for pound with beef. And like I said, if you put a little bit of beef in there with it, then you get that fattiness and that flavor.
Especially a high fat, instead of getting like the 92% lean, this is only 73%, so it's 27% fat, so that'll help with cooking and with the flavor.
All right, babe, you ready to get started?
Ready as I'll ever be.
All right, let's go. All right, so we've got our ground meat in here and it is cooking, and this will take a long while to go, but it's going. And then we have a rice cooker. I'm gonna cook 5 cups of rice in here, and rice cookers just make it super easy. You put the rice in the water and you set it to go, and you just don't even have to think about it. So I need 5 cups of rice, and let's get that done. All right, now we've got Italian sausage we're gonna brown, a pound of that. And I just set the oven to 400 so that I can get some bacon in once it's preheated. And while this is browning, I'm gonna go ahead and get my bacon out on trays ready to go in the oven. So as soon as it's preheated, I can stick it in. And I always put foil on my baking sheets when I'm cooking bacon. It just makes it clean up so much easier. All right, those are ready. Let me give my hands a good wash, and then we'll move on to something else. While the Italian sausage is browning, I'm gonna go ahead and cut out the smoked sausage into little circles and get it browning, and we'll use this for our gumbo. The sausage is really already cooked. It just needs to be browned a little to give it a little more flavor. So that's all I'll do. And this sausage, the Italian sausage, looks actually really great. I'm gonna turn the heat off on that and set it to the side to cool. Okay, the oven just went off at 400 degrees. I'm gonna put these in for 20 minutes. I'll probably check them after 15 just in case, but these are thicker slices of bacon. They're a nice blue and gold, so it'll take a bit for them to cook. And I've got this browning, and these are almost done.
All right, so here's a quick tip. We've seen this before, we've read about it, we've never actually tried it, but since I had a lot of garlic to do, we decided to give it a try. I did a couple of test runs off camera, and just a regular mason jar. We'll start with just a full head. I haven't done anything to this yet. Drop it in a jar, screw the lid on, and this is one of those things, I should let the girls do it. If you've got a kid that wants to be a helper, let them just run around and shake this for a little bit. But that's all we're gonna do. We're just gonna give it a good violent shake like we're mixing paint at the hardware store, and it's gonna peel it for us. So if you have a good shaking arm, this might be faster and better than peeling and well, peeling, not cutting. It's not gonna cut it for us. So watch this. If you see inside there, the dried skins just break away and flake off. And the first couple that I tried, since we're giving it test runs, every single clove might not be peeled quite as well as I want, but most of them are. That's ready to go. So what I'm doing is, if I pull one out and it still has the papery dry layer on the outside, just drop it back in. It doesn't have to be the whole head for this to work. And it is faster than just picking through, and easier than just picking through. Yep, so that whole thing goes in the trash. I have a few here that before we decided to try it, I was just breaking apart, and I didn't get down to peel that close last layer off. I just was stacking them out of the way. So I'm gonna throw these all back in, and then I've got one more head to still do after this. I don't know if size or age or anything like that makes this work better or worse, but it seems to work, so.
All right, up next is some potato soup, which I'm super excited about. So the first thing that we're gonna do before anything else is we have 4 large baking potatoes, all chopped up and tossed in here in a pot of water, and we are just going to boil these to cook them for a few minutes before we start making the actual soup. All right, so these potatoes have been boiling in here for a while now. I boiled them until you can, the best test is to stick a fork through them, and if it slides through easily, then your potatoes are cooked all the way through. So now we're going to drain these out and start working on the soup. All right, so to put the soup together, the first thing we're gonna do is to melt some butter in this pot. I have 1/3 cup of butter in here, and just going to start melting that real quick. Now that that's all melted, I'm going to start adding the other ingredients. So it's going to be 1/4 cup of flour, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. And I'm just going to start stirring that together. And once that's all together and smooth, we can start adding the milk. So I'm just gonna gradually start pouring that in. And now that all the milk is in there, you want to next get this to a boil and just stir it until you get it to a boil. All right, so this is boiling now. So when it starts boiling, you just want to cook it until it's real thick, and it's gotten pretty thick now. So what we're gonna do after you've gotten to that point is you turn the heat off, and then we are going to add a few last ingredients, starting with a cup of sour cream. And we're just gonna whisk that in. And then next, we're going to add the potatoes. So our cooked potatoes are just gonna go in there. And then last but not least, we have 1/4 cup of these green onions that I'm gonna put in. And once those are in, that is all there is to the soup. And now we're gonna let this cool a few minutes and then get them in these super cubes. All right, the last thing that we're gonna do with the soup is start to store it. So we have these neat things called super cubes, and these are these silicone molds that are in a little square that you would pour a soup into. We have these 2-cup ones because these will fit perfectly into these bowls that they've made. And so you'd pour these in and freeze it, and we are to be able to use these more. We're gonna freeze these, then pop them out of these and store them in Ziploc bags in the freezer. And then whenever we wanna have soup for dinner, we'll just pull them out of the Ziploc bags, put them in these, and then to reheat them, you put them in the oven at 400 degrees for about an hour. So now we're going to start doling this out. All right, so that fit 6 servings, which is about 12 cups of soup. So now we are going to just top these off with a little bit of bacon, and I'm just crumbling this up and sprinkling it on top. And some cheddar cheese. All right, and there we have 6 servings of potato soup ready to go in the freezer. So we're gonna freeze these, and then once they're completely frozen, we're gonna pop them out and stick them in Ziploc bags, and then they're ready to go.
All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is like a copy of the Just Crack an Egg cups, except in little bags. So all you're gonna need is sweet potatoes, cheddar cheese, and bacon, and we're just gonna put them in little bags. So when you want to reheat this, all you have to do is scramble up an egg and put all of that in a bowl together with one of these bags. And then you heat it up in the microwave, or you could do it in a skillet. Either way is fine, but let's get started. So first we're going to do a 1/4 cup of diced sweet potatoes in each of our 4 little bags. So the next thing we're gonna do is add some cheese. About a tablespoon. And then a 1/4 cup of bacon in each bag. Let me go wash my hands. All right, now that all that's done, we can zip these up. And we're just going to put these in a gallon Ziploc bag. So you want to make sure you label the bag, and then you put it in your freezer, and then you're done.
All right, next up is one of our freezer fit meals. If you're not familiar with freezer fit, we have a whole video explaining it. It's this really cool website that just makes it easy to find recipes, do your shopping, call out what you already have, and it makes shopping, buying things a lot easier. Full disclosure, we do have an affiliate link, but it's only because we love the product. And so this recipe came from their website. What we're gonna be doing is mixing together. Most of what we're using today is our venison. We're mixing in 1 pound of venison, a 1/2 pound of Italian sausage. We've got our salt, we've got our pepper, we've got some onions, some garlic. We have 1 egg, fresh egg from the homestead. Well, from my parents' homestead, I think. Some sliced or cubed, actually, mozzarella, some fresh parsley, and a little bit of almond flour. And basically, we're gonna mix everything into this bowl except for the mozzarella. Okay, the only other thing that I don't have sitting out is a 24-ounce jar of marinara sauce, because you don't add that into the prep. You just make sure that's in your pantry. When we pull this out of the freezer to put it in the oven, then we'll add the marinara, so you won't see that here today. But basically, we're just gonna start mixing this up, and then we're going to look at how to form our meatballs. Now, you may notice that I am using food prep gloves this afternoon. I don't normally use these just for cooking here at home. I do when I'm working in kitchens for other people, which sometimes we have the opportunity to do. But when I was helping cut things earlier, I had a little mishap, and so I have a Band-Aid on my thumb, and I am keeping that Band-Aid out of the food and also the food out of my Band-Aid, so I grabbed our gloves today. All right, so our meat is in here. We're going to need, well, we're mixing all of these. We'll do the onions and the garlic first. We've got an egg here. It just goes straight in like that. Okay, by the way, that was a 1/2 cup of onion and only 1 tablespoon of garlic. We're also doing a 1/2 cup of flour, but I have my 1/4 cup handy, so I'm gonna do that twice. And this is almond flour going in this recipe. The parsley that we pulled fresh out of our little hydroponic system is also 1 tablespoon. I just chopped it with my chef's knife, and that's going right in there. And the only thing left is salt and pepper. So we're doing 1/2 teaspoon of pepper and 1 full teaspoon of salt. Since I have my little 1/2 teaspoon here, I'll do 2 of these as well. This, by the way, is unrefined mineral real salt. It says it's ancient, and there's probably an expiration date on here, which is funny, but it's interesting. It looks like I'm just putting beach sand straight in here, but This is good salt. It doesn't have some of the junk added to it, and we like using the Redmond real salt. So I believe that is all of my ingredients. There's a little sausage we'll put back for something else, and we're not going to use the cheese quite yet. So let's just get mixing. There's my spoon hiding over there. All we're shooting for is having all of these ingredients mixed together. Since we've got two different kinds of meat, I want those mixed thoroughly, evenly. By the time my meat is mixed together, everything else is going to be mixed in just fine. There's no super science to this. We just want it evenly distributed, so when I form a meatball, all of the onions aren't in one meatball and the rest of them are missing out, or a clump of flour in just one meatball. We want them to be consistent. Now again, some of the meals that we make, we fully cook them and then freeze them, and then all we have to do is warm them back up, sometimes in the microwave, sometimes in the oven or on the stove. It just depends on the recipe or if we're in a hurry. But this is one from Freezer Fit that's a little different. It's faster to prepare because we will wait and cook it when we're ready to eat. So we're not going to do the cooking today. We are going to form these meatballs, and you'll see me actually wrap them around the cheese cubes, and we're going to go put them in the freezer and let them firm up and hold their shape. And we'll move on probably to another project and give those time to harden. Actually, on this bitter cold winter day, it's about 10 degrees outside, maybe a little less now in the evening. I could just set them outside and let them freeze. They'd freeze faster, but then Zeus, our livestock guard dog, would probably not leave them alone. So we'll put those in the freezer. When they firm up, we'll come back and we'll bag them up, and that will be what we take out when it's time to cook and add the marinara, and then we'll cook them when it's dinner time. But so that makes this one a little bit different. We're not going to be putting these in the oven yet. They will be in the freezer ready to go. This looks like a pretty good mix. All right, so the way this works is really simple. We're going to take a wad of meat and make a little hamburger patty, little mini, like you're making sliders. Press them out, and we're going to stick a block of cheese, maybe a little more meat on that. That might be a little too small to get around this thing. A block of cheese in the middle, and then we're just going to wrap it around. So it's like we're making a carb-free ravioli. There's no pasta, there's no dough. So there you go. There is our first meatball. Side note, the mozzarella that we're using is, if you've had reason to look into dairy products, you may be familiar with this already. This is what they call A2 dairy, A2 cheese. Here in Oklahoma, our local Brahms stores do milk and cheese, and maybe even their ice cream is A2. It's easier on the digestive system. I'm not giving medical advice or anything, but if you have issues with dairy, it would be something to consider, or at least look into. It might be something that'll work better for you. And this came from Azure, and so we have almost every month, probably every month, we put in an order with Azure Standard and get some really great produce and things from them. And this cheese came from them as well. So if you don't have Brahms in your area for things like that, Azure Standard can hook you up. This is all we got to do for now. I'm going to take these down to the freezer, let them firm up real good, and then we'll come back later and bag them up. Okay, we're back. We actually Didn't move on to a new recipe just yet. We had to go take care of animals outside because we're having to check and change water 3, 4, maybe 5 times a day because it is so cold. And then we came back, we got some dinner, and now we are picking back up where we left off. Our meatballs are frozen. This recipe is super simple. It's just the meatballs. Until we get ready to cook it, we'll pull that jar of marinara out of the pantry. So all we're gonna do is stick them in our Ziploc bag. Now a regular Ziploc or whatever brand freezer bag will work fine. But we have these fancy reusable bags. They're very sturdy, and so far we like them a lot. We've got a link down below showing where we got those. And also part of the freezer fit system is these sticker templates. So instead of trying to Sharpie on a Ziploc bag and get all the information on there and keep it readable, the recipe comes ready to go. All we have to do is click print and load our printer with the sticker template paper that we picked up. And so it's got the name, the oven instructions, if we're cooking it from thawed or from frozen, either one. So if we have time to thaw it, if not, we know what to do. It's got a use by date on there, and we're gonna stick it right on our baggie. We've also got this little stand that's holding, or it's going to, once I finish clipping it in here, holding our bag up for us. And we're just going to take these and drop them right in. That's really all there is to it for this recipe, as long as we don't forget and use up that jar of marinara sauce before we're ready to cook this recipe. You could make a sticker and stick it on the marinara, so it says 4 meatballs in freezer, something like that, if you're actually worried about that. But here we go. These are in. Just pop it out of the holder here. We will zip it up, and this is our meal ready to go. Brief interruption to our big cooking day. Christy made that huge tub of beef, a venison beef mixture, and when we were getting the meat out, getting ready to sort it out, put it away, we drained the grease off. And so I have a pot of grease, not as much as you would expect because we used mostly venison, which is leaner, but I've got maybe a 1/3 of an inch or so grease down in here. And so here's a quick tip that we picked up somewhere. We might not do this all the time, but especially right now with it being so cold, this grease is going to turn into a treat for our chickens, our turkeys, whatever birds are out here trying to find some food. And it's a really simple thing. Certainly don't want to just send this down the drain, and I don't even want to pour it in the backyard. The dogs are just going to roll in it trying to eat it. But we're going to just take some oats, just regular good old oats, and mix it in, let the oats soak up the grease. Put enough in here that it's not going to be a pasty it's probably going to be pasty anyway, but and then tomorrow when we let the chickens out to range for the day, we'll take and we'll chuck this out with their feed. It'll give them a nice treat and get them some extra fat that's going to help them in the cold weather. So here we go. It's going to take all of that because that is quite a bit of grease. So as I'm stirring it in, you see the oats are just soaking that up. Instead of pouring a puddle out on the ground, I'll probably add a little more to this, but this will give us some to just pitch in with their food in the morning, and they'll have an extra treat during the cold weather.
Okay, all of the ground beef is cooked, and now it's time to get our chickens. I have 3 whole chickens, and this should be plenty of chicken for what we're going to be doing. Just as a typical rule of thumb, whole chickens will give you 3-ish pounds of meat per chicken, depending on the size. The size can vary greatly, but that's just a good estimate. And I'm putting these in at 400 degrees, and I'll check on them periodically. And there they go. This roasting pan will easily fit 3 chickens. You probably could fit 4 or 5 if you really crammed them in there, but easily 3. The next thing on my agenda is going to be some pizza dough that we're going to make and freeze so that we can pull out and make homemade pizzas whenever we want, because the pizza dough is by far the most time-consuming process in that. It's easy for us to just have toppings and cheese on hand, pull a pizza dough out, and get a whole fresh pizza when we want one. Now, I will say this. I am going to show you how to do this with wheat berries and milling our own flour, because we are trying to transition to a lot more whole grains, freshly milled whole grains, because the health benefits are huge to freshly milled whole grains. However, you can substitute whole wheat, or there's tons of just regular flour recipes online. The only difference in using regular flour and whole wheat flour is that with whole wheat flour you're going to use a little more liquid because it absorbs more liquid. So just so you know, you can substitute regular flour, just use a little less liquid, or find a recipe that's designed for regular flour. This one is specifically designed for use with whole wheat flour. These are hard white wheat berries. There's different types of wheat berries that we use for different things. Hard white is the kind you're going to use if you're making breads and things that need to rise and need some structure. So in order to get 4 to 4.5 cups of ground wheat, I'm going to use 3 cups of wheat berries. And if y'all are interested in more content that has to do with grinding your own wheat and how to do that in the process, I'm happy to share it more in detail in some individual videos. Just let me know in the comments down below. All right, let's head over to the mill and mill this flour. There are several different types of mills you can use. This one's a Mott Mill 200, and I really do love it. I had a KitchenAid attachment that worked great, but it was slow. This one is incredibly fast. All right, now to our 4 cups of freshly ground wheat, I am going to add 2 cups of warm water. And we're just gonna mix this together. All right, we mix this until a soft dough forms, and now we're gonna let it rest for about 20 minutes. This allows the gluten strands to form and strengthen. So I'll see you back then. All right, it has been 20 minutes, so now we're gonna mix in the rest of our ingredients. We're going to sprinkle 4 teaspoons of instant rise yeast over top, then a 1/4 cup of olive oil, and 2 teaspoons of salt. And we'll mix this all together. All right, now that it's all mixed up a little bit, I am going to take it and I'm going to knead this for about 5 minutes, just on the counter here, a nice clean surface. And you can do this in the stand mixer and set it and forget it, but when we're doing these huge freezer meals, that's just one more thing to get out and mess with and clean, so I'm just doing it by hand, and that's gonna be great. All right, so that has been 5 minutes of kneading. It's smooth, elastic, it's doing good. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this in half because this recipe makes 2 pizza doughs. Now freezing them is a really simple process. You're gonna kind of make a ball with each of them, flatten it out a little bit. You don't wanna flatten it out as flat as a pizza dough because we'll do that when we reheat it. I'm gonna take some labeled gallon Ziploc bags, and I'm just gonna drizzle a little bit of oil in there. This is gonna help the pizza dough not to stick to the edges. And I'm just gonna make sure I have it all along the edges. And I'm gonna take my pizza dough and I'm gonna stick it right inside this bag. Let the air out and seal it up. Let's get the other one. All right, and now I have my pizza dough ready for the freezer, and it'll lay nice and flat. And I put the reheating instructions right here, a date, label it. Always label your bags, even if you think you're gonna know what they are, label them anyway, because inevitably you'll have some mystery ingredients at the bottom of your deep freeze. But this is super simple. on the day you want to make pizza, pull it out, let it come to room temperature, and then you're going to roll the pizza dough out big, as thick as you want it for whatever kind of pizza you're making. Add your toppings and then put it in the oven at 400 degrees for 15 to 20 minutes. And that's all there is to this one. Let's move on, and Taylor is gonna have some potatoes.
All right, so these potato soups have been in the freezer for a while. So now we can just pop them out of these and stick them in Ziploc bags. And these gallon Ziploc bags we found will fit 4 of these. And there you have 6 meals of potato soup all ready to go. All right, so next up we're going to be making a garlic mashed potato casserole. So to start this off, we have some potatoes that we're gonna boil and cook. So to do this is 5 pounds of potatoes. They're already peeled and diced. And so I'm going to fill this up with water so it covers the potatoes. Set it on the stove, let it boil. Once it boils, you want to put it on a low and let it simmer for 20 to 25 minutes. And then it'll be cooked. And while we're doing that, I'm going to show y'all how to do the cream cheese spread that's going to go with this. So I'm gonna go get these cooking and then I'll show you how to make that. All right, while that's going, I'm gonna show you how to mix up the garlic herb and cheese spread. So the first thing this is gonna need is, we have 16 ounces of cream cheese. I'm going to put in there. Okay, next we have a 1/2 cup of sour cream, 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese. Then I have 2 cloves of garlic, which is about a tablespoon, 2 teaspoons of dried parsley, teaspoon of chives, teaspoon of dried dill, and we have 1/2 teaspoon of dried basil, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, and a 1/4 teaspoon of dried thyme. And you just want to mix that up. Okay, so now that that's done, all we have to do is wait for the potatoes to finish cooking. All right, so our potatoes are done cooking, so I have drained them and brought them over here. So what we're gonna do is start mashing them. So you just want to mash them until they're smooth. Once those are mashed, you want to pour in, I have 1 1/4 cups of milk. And then we can mix in the cream cheese. And now that that's mixed up, we are just going to wait until this goes to room temperature, and then we can dole them out and get them ready to freeze. All right, now that this is cool, we are going to start doling it out into these casserole dishes. Before we put the lids on, we're going to cover these with foil. So now that that's done, the last thing to do is to write the cooking instructions on these. So the way you are going to reheat these is you can thaw them in the fridge overnight. It'll cook faster if you do. So you're gonna bake them at 375 degrees for 40 minutes, or if you didn't thaw them, 90 minutes. And then you're gonna take the foil off and bake an additional 5 to 10 minutes. And that is it. So this is our delicious garlic mashed potato casserole, which we're super excited about trying. And now on to the next recipe.
Okay, this one is easy. It's gonna go into the crock pot and set for a while we're making it. It is sausage and tortellini soup. We did this one as a soup video and it turned out really delicious. I wasn't sure how the tortellinis would hold up, but they actually held up really well freezing them, and it was one of my husband's favorites, and so we're gonna make sure we get this into the super cubes, but first into the crock pot it goes. So we have already browned this sausage. So this is 1 pound of Italian sausage. We're just gonna dump this into the crock pot. And then 1 small onion diced, about a cup. 3 cloves of garlic, which is about a tablespoon. Then we have 3 tablespoons of flour. The recipe calls for a teaspoon of basil. I had some basil growing in my little hydroponics system, so I'm gonna just use fresh basil. So just a little handful of fresh basil. Half a teaspoon of oregano, a sprinkle of cayenne, a teaspoon of hot sauce, half a teaspoon of mustard powder, a sprinkle of red pepper flakes, a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, 5 cups of chicken broth. I'm just gonna give this a little stir, and then once that's going, I am going to set the crock pot on high for 4 to 6 hours, and I will come back and we'll add some kale and the tortellini and some cream after it's cooked for a little bit, and then we'll get it up in our super cubes. So next, Michaela is gonna be making some garlic breadsticks for us to put in the freezer and have with our Italian meals.
So the next recipe we're doing is Italian breadsticks, and we're going to do this in our bread machine. I'll explain what you would do if you weren't using your bread machine, but let's get started mixing. So first, we're going to add 1.5 cups of hot water. We're going to add our salt, so we need 2 teaspoons of salt. And we're going to use 1 egg. This is one of our blue eggs that are hen laid. So we're going to use our rice bran extract, or you can use lecithin powder, which is what this is. Not sure how to say that. So we need 1 tablespoon of this. We're going to add 3 cups of flour. We have our own home milled flour that we just did. I'll be using that. So 1, 2, and 3. I'm just gonna mix this until it thickens up. So now we're going to add our yeast. We need 1 tablespoon of instant rising yeast. We're supposed to sprinkle this over the top and then keep mixing. So now we're just gonna add a little bit more flour. And we're just gonna keep adding this 1/2 cup at a time until we get a soft dough. So now we're going to add 1/3 cup of honey. And now we're going to add our oil, 1/3 cup of this. 1 teaspoon of wheat gluten. What you would do if you're not using a bread machine would knead it for 5 to 6 minutes and let it set for an hour, but since I'm using a bread machine, that's gonna do that all for me. So we're gonna put this in our machine. And we're gonna set this to 15, which is homemade bread setting. All right, so we're just gonna set the timer and hit start, and this should do it for us. And we'll pull it out and add the rest of our ingredients and shape our breadsticks.
While Michaela's bread is rising in the bread machine, we are gonna go ahead and put together another freezer meal. This is gonna be cube steaks with gravy, and this is another delicious freezer fit recipe. Lance mentioned about freezer fit, that we did a video kind of reviewing the site and things, and it's wonderful. It makes it super duper easy, and they have delicious, super healthy meals. But this one is really quick. We're gonna take our 6 cube steaks, and these are actually venison cube steaks from the deer that Taylor got this year. And we're gonna put these in our bag. You can use beef cube steaks. Then we're gonna put 2 cups of water in here. And this is a reusable Ziploc bag. You do not have to use these, but since we do so many freezer meals, it's nice to just be able to reuse them over and over again. 1/3 cup of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. The recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, but since we've minced up a bunch of garlic, I'm just gonna put a little bit of minced garlic in here. 2 tablespoons of beef bouillon, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, 1/2 teaspoon of thyme, and that is it for this one. We are gonna take it out of these little notches. I love these stands are 100% not necessary, but when you're putting stuff in baggies, they hold your baggies up really well. So I like having them. They make it easier when you're doing some of these dump and go bag recipes. We wanna seal this up really well. And I don't have to label this with our marker because Freezer Fit, one of the things they do is you can print off the little instruction label. They have it pre-made, ready to go for you. And so it just says cube steaks and gravy. I'm gonna put the use by date on here. And it has reheating instructions for the crock pot and the Instapot. If I'm putting this in the Instapot, I'm gonna just throw this in the Instapot from frozen, add 1/4 cup of water, and then pressure cook on high for 25 minutes and do a quick release. Then I will remove the steaks and saute with some cornstarch to thicken up that gravy and add those steaks back in. And then you can serve it however you like. You can serve it with mashed potatoes, or you can just serve it as is, or however you like to do your cube steaks and gravy. So another one ready for the deep freeze.
All right, this next recipe is a super easy and quick one, and I'm really excited about it. We are making cheddar ranch burgers. So to start this off, we're going to be just making the patties and putting them and freezing them in bags. When we get them out, we're gonna get them out and thaw them and cook them. They're not going to be pre-cooked, but they'll still be great. So to start this off, I have 2 pounds of, we're using ground venison in here. And so if you mix that up, you can use, we have next, we're going to add 1 cup of cheddar cheese. And then we are going to add 3 tablespoons of ranch seasoning. And just mix that in. Okay, so now that we have that all mixed up, we are going to start rolling these and making patties out of them. So I have these wax papers that I'm going to put them on so they don't stick together, and I'm just gonna start. You want 6 equal pieces. All right, so now that that's done, we can start putting them in the bags. Okay, and now they are all done and ready to freeze. So all you're gonna do when you go to take these out and cook them is you just take them out and put them on the skillet. There's really not much to it. And with whatever else you like your burgers on. So next, we'll be on to the next recipe.
All right, so the next recipe I'm super excited about are these little English muffin pizzas. These are little lunch things that we did in our lunch freezer meal video. We're doing these again because they were really good. So let's get started. First, we're just gonna need a jar of pizza sauce and some English muffins. Now we put 3 in each package. So I'm just gonna get 3 of these out and put some of this sauce on. About a spoonful for each. Now I'm just gonna add some mozzarella cheese. And then I'm gonna add the pepperonis. And then you just set them in the little box you have. And we're gonna put our labeled lids on with the date on them, and you have your little pizza box. All right, go ahead and do the rest. And we are done. So, behold, the Leaning Tower of Pizza. So these were super easy, and they're also gonna be really delicious. All you have to do is stick them in the freezer, and when you want to reheat them, you just stick them in the microwave. You can keep them in these, or you can put them on a plate and stick them in the microwave, and they'll reheat faster. But that is it. So I'm back for the breadsticks, and we have our dough on a floured, clean surface. And we're going to roll this out to a 10-inch by 18-inch rectangle. So the bread machine does really well with this, especially since it's cold outside, because it can't really proof as well in a cold area. You need it to be in a warm spot, and our kitchen isn't really a warm spot, so the bread machine helped make it really poofy. Now we're gonna take a 1/4 cup of melted butter, 2 cloves of garlic that are minced, and we're gonna mix these together. So now we're going to brush our dough with this garlic butter mix with a pastry brush. I like making bread, and I also like making Italian food, and they also both taste really good, so Italian bread is the best. So we're just gonna take our Italian seasoning and sprinkle this over. Now we're gonna cut this, and I'm using this pastry knife thing to cut it, and you wanna make sure you're not cutting it. This is the longer side. You're not gonna cut it like that. You're gonna cut it from side to side, as the bottom being the shorter side, like this. And you want these to be 1/2 inch thick, so I'm gonna mark my spaces, and then I can cut along those lines. Now the reason these are so thin is because you're going to twist 2 of them together and make fancy twisted breadsticks. And then you're just gonna take them and twist them together. And then you're going to pinch them together at the ends, and you're just gonna stick them on this baking sheet. So once you put them on the baking sheet, they're going to sit for 20 minutes to rise. And once those are done rising, we'll put them in the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes. So we're going ahead and twisting them once, and then folding them and twisting them again, because they're not gonna fit if we don't. We're just gonna take it and fold it in half, and then twist it up again. You get a nice breadstick. Before we pop these in the oven, they're going to set for 20 minutes and rise. All right, so these are done rising, and they look perfectly poofy. We're gonna stick these in the oven for 15 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'll see you when these are out.
All right, this next recipe is gonna be super easy. We're making shrimp scampi, and this is a freezer fit meal. So it's pretty much dump everything in a bag and go. So going to just start with the shrimp. We have 2 pounds of cooked shrimp. They're cooked, they don't have their tails on them or anything. So next we have 1/3 cup of chicken broth, 1/2 cup of apple cider vinegar. Then we have 1/3 of an onion, a 1/4 cup of olive oil, 1/4 cup of parsley. Then you squeeze half a lemon. Then we have 2 tablespoons of butter. And then I have a tablespoon of minced garlic. And then there are some seasonings. So we have a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of basil, dried oregano, onion powder, then half a teaspoon of black pepper and crushed red pepper flakes. So let's go in there. And that is all for this bag. It is super easy. You can add, after you make it, 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan cheese for garnishing. All right, so there we go. That is our shrimp scampi. So now just stick on the sticker. And the way you're going to reheat this is, so you thaw this overnight in the fridge, and then you can cook it in the skillet over medium heat and just like saute it. And then at the end, you sprinkle on the Parmesan cheese. It's 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese. So there is this. And now we are on to the next recipe.
Our chickens have been cooked and they've cooled all the way, so now we can shred them. And this is a really simple process. I'm just going to pull the meat off that we can get. And I'm gonna leave the bones in here. We can just leave all the bones and the liquid that came off of the chicken and make some broth out of this. You really wanna make sure your chickens are cooled before you do this, or it will singe your fingers. If you wanna pull them and pull the meat off before they're cooled, a lot of times I'll do that under cool running water because that'll keep it from singeing your little fingers. When you cook them like this, the meat really just falls off of the chickens. So I have shredded all of that chicken. The bones, the juice are still in here. So I'm gonna go ahead and add our vegetable scraps straight in here. And then I'm gonna cover everything with water. And that should be good. Now I'm gonna set this to low. And we'll let this go 8 to 12 hours. There we go.
All right, so these are out of the oven, and I'm gonna show you in up close of what they came out as. So now all that's left to do is bag these up. And we're putting them in 2 individual bags. There's 14 of these, so we're gonna put 7 in each bag. So we're gonna make sure these are labeled. All right, so these are all done. And now we're gonna move on to our next recipe.
Okay, I'm finishing up our sausage tortellini soup. So to do this, we have some kale. So we have 2 cups of kale going into this. Put that in here. And you want to stir that around. After it's stirred around, we are going to let the kale cook in here for 10 to 15 minutes. And while we're letting the kale cook, we are going to cook the tortellini noodles. They look like popcorn. So I have these, and we're going to cover this up and cook them in 15 minutes. We'll check this, and hopefully we'll be able to finish up the soup. Okay, so the next step after that is done is to temper some heavy cream. So we have a cup of this, and I'm going to microwave it for 45 seconds, and then we're gonna add it to the mix. All right, here it is, and we're just gonna pour that in. And now the last thing we have to do is pour in the tortellini. All right, now that it is all cooled off, it's time to put it in these. Now these are gonna go in the freezer, and as soon as they're done freezing, we're gonna pop them back out and stick them in some bulk bag, and they'll be ready to go.
All right, next up is our Hamburger macaroni skillet. This is another pretty easy one. We're going to toss into one of our reusable freezer bags. And we, of course, we already browned all of our meat, so we're gonna have 1 pound of ground meat. We have 2 cups of macaroni noodles. So I went ahead after Taylor finished her tortellini in the last recipe and got our noodles started, because you do go ahead and cook the noodles, except you don't cook them all the way. It's called par cooking or partial cooking. And for some things like noodles, it helps. If you're gonna be freezing and then recooking, helps them stay firm. If you cook them all the way, then they can get a little soggy. It seems different kinds of noodles work differently. The tortellinis that we did last time did fine without par cooking. I think it's because they're a much denser noodle. Egg noodles seem to be very thin, and they're the ones that get soggy the most. Macaroni doesn't do too bad, but what we did, the instructions recommend 6 to 8 minutes for boiling just regular macaroni noodles. I don't know that I've ever had them done in only 6 minutes. It's usually pushing that 8-minute mark. What we did was we cooked them for 5 minutes. It's a little more firm than, you know, what you would call al dente. It's al dente or pre al dente, but they're already cooked. They're soft, but they're still quite firm. And so that step is done. I got 2 cups of noodles in here ready to go. Now, I will say it's a lot like blanching. Bring the water to a boil up front and then add your noodles and give them 5 minutes, maybe 6 if you want a little longer. And then when I took them off the heat, I drained them and ran cold water over them to bring the temperature down and stop the cooking process, so they don't just sit there and just keep softening while they're waiting to do your other stuff. So these are ready to go. What I'm going to do is mix a lot of the little stuff in the pot with the noodles. The instructions say just dump it all right in the bag and mix it in the bag. I think it'll be easier to mix if I go ahead and stir these together. I'll put the noodles in the bag, I'll put the meat in the bag, and we've got, recipe calls for 28 ounces of diced tomatoes. We're using some of our canned tomatoes today, and this is a quart or 32-ounce jar, so there'll be just a little extra on the tomato. When we canned them, we didn't cut them down in diced pieces, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut those down, and that'll just be the last thing I add to the bag to make that easy and hopefully less messy. So the other ingredients that we're working with today is 1 cut up onion. Since we prepared all of our vegetables and stuff ahead of time, we're using 1 cup of onion. We're using half of a bell pepper, or I'm using half cup of the pre-cut bell pepper. We have a teaspoon of parsley. I measured out into a larger, this is a 1/4 cup, but there's only 1 teaspoon of parsley in there. So that's ready to go. It says red pepper flakes to taste. This is where I have to be careful. I love red pepper. I could easily way overdo this. The girls don't like red pepper very much. Christy does. Christy would be fine, but I want us all to eat and enjoy this, and so I'm gonna add just a light amount of red pepper flakes and call that good. We also need 1 tablespoon Worcestershire sauce and 2 tablespoons of just good old ketchup. Okay, the other ingredients are salt and pepper to taste. So I'm not going to worry about that right now. We can salt and pepper when we cook. Since I'm doing that, I'll add on the instructions on the bag, reheating salt and pepper to taste, so remember to do that. But I'm going to take this little mixture here and just stir it around good in my little pot. And I think my wooden stirring spoon is not going to help me get it in that bag. So let me find something different for transport. Actually, you know what? This measuring cup will probably do. Yeah, looky there. Okay, add our ground meat. I think I said ground beef earlier. This is mostly venison from this hunting season just about a month ago. Last thing we're gonna do is cut these tomatoes down a little smaller. We canned them in not quite halves, like fourths. So they're quite large to just be in a dish like this. So all I'm going to do is cut these down. Okay, for assembly, we are complete and ready to go. I didn't print it yet, but we'll print off the instructions to stick on this bag. I am going to try to mix it a little bit since I put the noodles, the meat, and the tomatoes in separately, just to get it a little bit more evenly distributed in there, but I'm not incredibly worried about it being super mixed because when we heat it up, it'll have a chance to do that. So our reheat instructions for this, super simple. Everything in here is cooked, it just needs to be warm. And so what we'll do is we'll take this, dump it into a big old skillet, turn it on, and just stir it until it's warm all the way through. Don't forget, we're gonna put on here to salt and pepper to taste. The other optional ingredient is some shredded cheese. That doesn't go in now, that goes in when you heat it up. As a matter of fact, that's probably best to just put in a bowl on the table and let people serve right on top of this after it's heated. It'll melt right on top and be a delicious, super simple, really fast, because all the cooking is done, freezer meal. All right, I'm gonna get that label on here and we will get this in the freezer and on to the next meal.
All right, our chicken broth has cooled. And now what we're gonna do, instead of canning this, I'm just gonna save it until we're done with our freezer meals, especially because I think we'll end up using it because we've got gumbo coming up and some other things. So what I'm gonna do is I'm putting cheesecloth in a strainer here and I'm gonna strain it into this pot. And I'm just gonna pour it, and this cheesecloth should strain it really well so I don't get chunks in there. All right, we've got a good bowl full of broth. I'm gonna save it in this pot. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead and move gumbo up till tonight so that I can go ahead and use this and not have to store it away. And I think this will be fantastic and we won't have to let any of it go to waste, or we won't have to go through the extra steps of canning it. Next, we're gonna be making Not Your Mama's Meatloaf is what it's called. And it's a recipe I got from the Bright Line Eatings book, and it is carb-free. We're gonna start with 2 pounds of ground meat. This is actually venison, like we've been using, so we can use up that deer meat. And then we're going to crack 1 egg in here, 4 ounces of marinara sauce, 6 ounces of riced cauliflower, 2 ounces or 1/4 cup of diced onion, a tablespoon of garlic, 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning, and 2 teaspoons of salt. Then we're gonna stir it up really well and mix all those ingredients together. Once this is really well incorporated, we are just gonna divide it up into 2 small loaf pans. They are ready to go in the freezer. When you pull these out of the freezer, you're going to let them thaw all the way, and then you're gonna put them in the oven for 350 degrees for 40 minutes. Or if you don't let them thaw, you can just double that time and put them in for 80 to 90 minutes. So, and that's all there is to it. 2 more for the freezer.
All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is mini banana blueberry bread thingies in our super cubes, except these are not for soup this time. These are smaller than the size we do the soups in because it's 1 cup and half a cup, and the soups are usually 2 cups. So the first thing we're gonna do is mix 1 1/3 cup of whole wheat flour, one-third cup of all-purpose flour. Next, we're going to mix a tablespoon of baking powder. Then we're going to mix in our cinnamon. We need 1 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 1 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We're just gonna mix this all together, and then we're gonna set this to the side. And now with a different bowl, we're gonna mix our wet ingredients. 1 1/2 cup of sugar, 1 cup of melted butter, and then 3 large eggs. Before we finish mixing our wet ingredients, we need to mash our bananas. 1 cup of mashed bananas, or about 2 or 3 bananas. Alright, my bananas are all mashed up, so we're just gonna put it in here. I'm gonna mix this up before we add the next ingredients. And now we're going to use 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now we're going to take our flour. And we're going to mix this in a little bit at a time. Alright, so now that this is all mixed, we are going to add our 1 1/2 cups of blueberries. We're going to be using 2 cup super cubes and 1 cup super cubes. I'm just going to pour this in. So we ended up having 2 of the 2 cup super cubes and 4 of the 1 cups. So we're just gonna sprinkle some sugar on here. This is pure cane sugar. So we're gonna put these in the oven at 350 Fahrenheit. The small ones go in 30 to 40 minutes, and these ones, the bigger ones, go in 40 to 50 minutes. So I will see you when they're out.
All right, the next recipe up is going to be some chocolate chip cookies, and we're gonna be making this with some of the homegrown flour that we made in the grinder. This is soft wheat flour, but you can use barley as well for this. So the first thing that we're gonna do is, in this big bowl, going to put in, I have 3/4 of a cup of butter, and it's kind of softened, kind of half melted. And then 2 kinds of sugar. We have a cup of dark cane sugar and a 1/4 cup of light sugar. And I'm just gonna mix that up. Next we have 2 eggs. And a teaspoon of vanilla. Okay, now that that's mixed up, we're going to put this to the side for a minute so that we can mix up the dry ingredients. So we have our flour. Now we are going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm just whisking those together. Now after that's mixed up really well, we want to slowly start adding this into the butter mixture. So just a little bit at a time. And that sounds like Michaela's bread in there. All right, now that that's all mixed up, next goes in the chocolate chips. I have 1.5 cups of chocolate chips, and we are just going to fold these into here. All right, there is our cookie dough batter all ready to go. So next we have these molds by Super Cubes. I'm using these. You can also just mold these into little balls and put them on a cookie sheet. But I'm just going to take and plop these in. All right, I don't have quite enough room to fit all of the dough in these 2 molds, so I'm gonna start putting them in these square molds and we'll see how they turn out. All right, so we're gonna stick these in the freezer for a little bit, and once they're frozen, we'll pop them out and stick them in Ziploc bags. Once they are frozen, you can reheat them almost like any other cookie. You wanna cook them at 375 degrees. For this recipe, it says 12 to 14 minutes, but since these are straight from frozen, you'll want to cook them a few minutes longer than that, just to make sure. This is a great way to make small amounts of cookies at once. Like if you're going to have dinner and you don't want to make a whole batch of cookies, you just want to make 4 or 5, you can just take a few of these and pop them in the oven, ready to go. And so that is it. And next we'll be on to the next recipe.
Next up is my favorite, gumbo. The first thing we need to do to make a gumbo is to make the roux. And if you've made gumbo with us before, we've done this. You're going to take 1 cup of flour and 1/2 cup of oil. And we're gonna stir this over medium heat. And you just wanna get all of the oil incorporated into the flour. And you're just gonna continue stirring this until it turns into a dark caramel color. A roux for a Cajun dish is a lot darker than a normal roux. You don't want it burned, but you do want it really dark. That adds that deep flavor. So keep stirring this. It could take 10 to 15 minutes for it to get actually the right consistency and color. I'll show you when we're getting close. All right, here we are. That roux looks about the right consistency and around the right color. So let's pour everything in. All right, in this pot, I have 4 quarts of our chicken juice from the other night, or you can have 4 quarts of water. Either way, you can have broth. It just adds a little more flavor. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 large onions in here, a couple of cloves of garlic, 1 cup of green onions. I got a 1/4 cup of parsley, but I'm gonna go ahead, this is our fresh parsley. I pulled some out of our indoor herb garden. We've got a 1/4 cup of celery, 1/4 cup of bell pepper, 2 to 3 pounds of chicken, and 2 to 3 pounds of smoked sausage. Now I'm gonna take that roux. I'm gonna be very careful because it's still very hot, and if you get roux on you, it sticks because it's got oil base and it burns. And I'm gonna put this roux in here and get this nice and stirred up and mixed. I'm gonna add some cayenne pepper because we like it with a little kick. And the seasonings at the end are really just a taste. And as you're cooking it, you can get a spoonful out and taste it. We're gonna add some salt. And some black pepper. This is a big pot of soup, so Don't be shy about your seasonings. And as you go, as it heats up, heats all the way through, you can taste it and see how it's progressing and add seasonings throughout. And we're gonna put this on a high temperature till it boils, and then we'll reduce it down to a simmer and simmer it for at least 2 hours. And that's all there is to it. Once this is done and cooled, we'll put it in the super cubes. But let's move on to the next one.
So these are out of the oven now, and all we have to do is pop these out of the mold and stick them in this bag. All right, so these are all bagged up, and they look and smell very delicious. So all we have to do is stick these in the freezer. So to warm these up, you need to thaw them out for an hour. Then you can put them in the microwave for about 2 minutes, or you can stick them in the oven at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for about 8 minutes, and then you can eat them. And now let's go to the next thing.
All right, I am tag teaming in for Christy to finish this one up. We have our big pot-o gumbo off the stove. It's had time to cool down a little bit, and I'm just going to dip into our super cubes. This is served over rice, and so if everybody's eating gumbo, if you're thawing it all out, and this is going to be the meal you're going to want to put on a pot of rice to pour these over. If a lot of times what we do, we have a lot of different kinds of soups in the freezer ready to go, and it's everybody go grab the one that you want, and so we might not all get gumbo at the same time. And so we like to keep on hand little microwave ready to go individual cups of rice, and it's really easy. We heat up our frozen super cube gumbo and pop one of those little cups in the microwave, and then one person can have their gumbo. So like our other soup recipes, we'll take these down and put them in the freezer, give them time to freeze, then we'll come back and pop these out so that we can reuse our super cube molds. Then they will store just in a Ziploc bag. We can fit 4 of these in a gallon-sized Ziploc bag. When it's time to reheat, we will pull them out and drop them right into these little super cube square bowls that are the exact size of the molds, and they will slide right in the oven 400 degrees for about an hour. Let's move on to the next recipe.
All right, so our next thing is sloppy Joe meat. Let's get over there. All right, so we're over here. We're gonna start adding our ingredients. This is 3 pounds of ground beef into our big pot. And then our 2 onions. We're just going to heat this on medium until these onions are all sauteed. And your beef, if you have not pre-cooked it, it will be brown. All right, so I think that this is all done. It looks pretty good. So we're gonna turn this on low heat, and we're gonna add in all our seasoning. First thing we're gonna add is 5 tablespoons of garlic powder. So next we're going to add our chili powder. We need 2.5 tablespoons of this. So now we're going to add our dried mustard. This is 2 teaspoons to 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. This is gonna be some spicy sloppy joe. 1 teaspoon of salt. 1/2 teaspoon of ground ginger. 1 1/3 cup of ketchup. And now we need 1/4 cup of Worcestershire sauce. 1 cup of water. So we're just going to stir this around, turn this to medium low, and we're just going to wait until pretty much all the fluid is gone, which is about 15 minutes. So I will see you when this is done. So my microphone cut out after we did the sloppy joe meat. So then we did our batch prep taco meat, and we heated up 3 pounds of ground beef in the stove, and we mixed up our seasoning. We had 3 tablespoons of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, 2 teaspoons of cumin, 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 1 teaspoon of oregano, half a teaspoon of ground pepper, and 1 teaspoon of coarse salt. And we mixed all that together, and then we stuck it in the pot with our heated up 3 pounds of ground beef and added a 1/4 cup of water. We mixed that all up and divided it into 3 packages of our taco meat.
All right, next on our list is another delicious freezer fit meal. This one is air fryer stuffed peppers. So we're gonna start with the filling, and we've got 1 pound of ground meat. And this we've already browned because this is what we did with our batch cooking. We're gonna just do this in a regular old skillet. And I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of taco seasoning and 3/4 of a cup of water. And we're gonna let this cook in for just a minute and heat up all the way through. Stuffed peppers are actually really a delicious treat, especially when you've got stuff coming out of your garden. Late in the summer when you've got peppers coming out of your ears, this is a fantastic way to use them. And we're using bell peppers for this one, but if you've got them in your garden, shishito peppers work really well for this. Any kind of big grilling pepper. This is pretty much cooked all the way through. So we're gonna add a cup of cooked rice, half a cup of black beans, and these are canned black beans, so they're already hydrated. You don't want to use dried beans for this. You want to hydrate them. About 3 stalks of green onion, 1 cup of corn, and 1 cup of cheddar cheese. And just stir this until it's nice and incorporated all together and mixed. All right, our next step is going to be to chop these peppers. We're going to cut the tops off, and we're going to cut them in half. And then I'm going to clean out the inside of them, the seeds and the inner parts of these bell peppers. And we started with 6 peppers, 2 of each color. We've got red and yellow and green, but you can use any kind of bell peppers if you want to all make them green, if that's what's cheaper or if that's what's available, whatever you have on hand. But this recipe will do 6 whole peppers. And now this is super simple. We're gonna take a spoonful of this and stuff the peppers. We're just gonna lay this stuffing down inside the peppers. All right, I still have some left over, so I'm gonna go grab, I have a couple of orange bell peppers in here. I'm gonna go grab those and fill those up too. All right, we are gonna take some plastic wrap and we're gonna wrap these, because when we put them in a Ziploc baggie to store, we don't want them to come apart. So even when we freeze them, that could happen. So we're going to wrap each one with plastic wrap, and we're gonna put it on a pan, and we're gonna just flash freeze these and pull them out in a bit to put in our baggie. And these are really simple. You're gonna thaw these, put them in the air fryer for 10 minutes at 350 degrees, add some cheese to the top if you want, and then cook them 5 more minutes in that air fryer. And then they're ready to go. And this probably goes without saying, but just in case, don't air fry the plastic wrap. Take the plastic wrap off of them before you air fry them. Time to put these in the freezer. Now I pulled these out to make room for the stuffed peppers. So we've got to put these in bags. These are the chocolate chip cookies, the tortellini, and the gumbo. So let's just get these in bags. Now I will give you a hint with these super cubes. They work amazingly well. Things just pop right out. But for the soups and things, letting them sit on the counter for 10 minutes before you pop them out makes it so much easier, just because they have time to release from the sides. But don't let them sit out too long or they'll start to melt.
All right, for our next meal, we're gonna do something like a shepherd's pie. I say like a shepherd's pie because classically shepherd's pie would have lamb or mutton. A lot of times we use beef, and technically that is often called cottage pie. But if you remember, the meat that we cooked up for our recipes for this event is mostly venison. So venison pie, or I choose to call it hunter's pie because we hunted for our venison, right? And if you grew up in the hills of Scotland and as a child your version of shepherd's pie was completely different than what I'm making, then share that story with us in the comments. But as far as the South Central United States, this is pretty much what we call shepherd's pie, and so this is what we're going to be putting together today. To start off with, we've got our pre-cut potatoes and our pre-browned meat. We're gonna head over to the stove. I'm going to boil because we're gonna need to mash these potatoes, and I'm going to start sauteing some onions and warming up our meat. And once that gets going, we'll come back and we'll talk about this mixture of ingredients that are going into this pie. All right, so in my big pot here, I put 3 pounds of our cut up potatoes. If your potatoes aren't prepared, wash them. You can skin them if you choose, or leave the skins in. For this, since we're whipping the mashed potatoes, which is gonna kind of be the top crust, if you will, on the pie, I like to leave the skins out of this one. Sometimes we like to leave the skins in, but you do that however you want. We're just going to cover these with water and get them boiling. It'll take, once it gets boiling, somewhere between 10-20 minutes. These are cut fairly small, so they should cook pretty fast. We just want them to be soft, right, but so that we can mash them. So while that's heating up, over here in our other pan, we are going to start getting our meat ready. So we're going to saute 1 medium onion, or since ours are pre-cut, we're using 1 cup. And we're going to start with 1 tablespoon of olive oil right here in the bottom of our big skillet. We're going to give this time to warm up a little bit. We'll add our onion and just let that cook down until they get soft, until they start getting clear. And then we will add our meat. Our meat is already cooked, but we do need to warm it up, and so that'll take about close to the same amount of time. It'll be a little faster actually, but close enough. Leave a comment below and let me know how many of you have a favorite burner on your stovetop. It's always the front right for me. I'm not sure why. If I've got one thing, I start here. If I've got more than one thing, the one that needs the most attention has to be right here on the front right. Maybe because I'm right-handed and the front is closer, I don't know. Or maybe it's just choice. What is your favorite burner, if that even makes sense? Okay, the oil is warming up a little bit. I know because it's easier. It's running around and filling, covering, coating the bottom of the pan. So I'm going to throw the onions on. All right, after just a couple of minutes, the onions are turning soft. They're starting to get that clear look to them. Actually, I had to turn my heat down. I left it up a little too high. They're starting to brown. That's not going to ruin them, but I don't want them cooking that fast. So now we're going to add our meat. But if you're doing this with fresh meat, just make sure it cooks and browns all the way through. All right, our meat looks thoroughly warmed at this point. The big chunks are broken down. If you're cooking with raw ground meat, just make sure it cooks all the way through. It's good and brown. Our potato water is almost ready to boil, so it's still going to take a little while for that. We're going to start adding our seasonings now into this. First up is going to be 1 tablespoon of dry Italian seasoning. Next up is 1/2 cup of beef broth. Next we're doing 1 teaspoon, and this is a 1/2 teaspoon, so I've got to do 2. That's just because I grabbed the wrong one. Next is 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. And finally a half teaspoon of black pepper. And we're just going to stir this in good, mix it together, let it simmer together to start soaking up that flavor. My potatoes are starting to boil now, so I'm going to set a timer for about 10 minutes so I remember to check them, and they should be getting close to being ready by then. Again, if you cut them into larger chunks, the same thing, because we're going to end up mashing them. Those take a little longer to cook. So I want to check them in about 10 minutes. And now that our seasonings are mixed in good, we got one more thing to add to our meat skillet, and that is our vegetables. Now we're just using bags of frozen mixed vegetables. You can custom tailor if you save stuff out of the garden and you want a certain thing in there. Make that however you want. But we're using just mixed bags of frozen. It's a combination of carrots, green beans, peas, and corn. We need 3 cups, 8 ounces in a cup, so 16, 24. The bags come in 12-ounce bags, so I'm adding 2 bags. And for this recipe, you do need a pretty good sized skillet because this ends up being quite a bit of food. I'm going to stir these in and just give them time to thaw and cook in. Again, fresh vegetables, you wouldn't have to leave them in there very long at all. But these are frozen, so I'm going to stir them around, give them time to cook in while we wait on our potatoes. All right, it's been about 12 to 13 minutes. Check the potatoes, they're soft, they're ready to go, so I'm going to turn the heat off over here. Our veggies are thawed out, warmed in. I sampled a couple of them and they're ready to go, so I'm going to turn the heat off over here. And we're going to go back to the countertop and mash these potatoes. All right, the next step is to mash these potatoes. Now, I did drain the water off of them already. I'm going to move them to this mixing bowl. Now, usually if we're just making mashed potatoes to eat, I just hand mash them. But these, I want this to be extra creamy on top of this pie, and so I got a little bit of help since I don't have just a hand mixer and I don't want to get out the big KitchenAid and have to clean that up. We're going to try this with our little immersion blender. This should work fine as long as I start slow and don't sling potatoes everywhere. Stick around, this may be exciting. What we're going to add to our 3 pounds of potatoes is 4 tablespoons or 1/2 stick of butter. And we're going to do 1/2 cup of whole milk. And we're going to also do 1/2 cup heavy whipping cream. We're going to start on low. All right, the last thing that we have to do now is just compile our 2 ingredients. It's very simple. Our meat vegetable mixture goes on bottom. The mashed creamy whipped potato topping goes right on top. If you were eating this right away, you would still put it in the oven, bake it 400 degrees for about 30 minutes, and then it's ready to serve. If this is going into the freezer, you can use a Pyrex dish like this and freeze it. My sweet mom got us extra of these because our wish list last year, a year ago, was having some so that we could actually put them in a freezer and still have a couple to use for day to day. And so we have this extra deep 9x13 with a lid. If you want to freeze it in a disposable aluminum pan, you can do that. Take it out of the freezer and put it straight into the oven. If you're using Pyrex like we're using, once it comes out of the freezer, you know, extreme temperature changes causes problems. You don't want your dish to break, and so you're going to want to let it set out to thaw, and then it will be ready to move into the oven. For that, it's going to be 350 degrees for 30 to 60 minutes. Check it, but we are going to start adding our ingredients. All right, on top goes our whipped potato topping. I'm gonna spread it around, smooth it out. This is it. I'm going to add our sticker onto our lid. We'll give this a little time to cool down before we go straight into the freezer. But this is another meal ready to go. We will see you for the next one.
All right, so this next recipe we're doing is lasagna in our 2-cup super cubes. These are great individual meals that we're putting in our super cubes that you can just pop into the little porcelain soup bowls thingies. We have oven ready lasagna noodles. If you don't, you can cook your lasagna noodles until they're soft. So the first thing we're going to do is prepare our ricotta mix. So we're going to add 16 ounces of ricotta cheese, 1 whisked egg, a half cup of Parmesan cheese, 1 bunch of fresh parsley chopped up. So the next thing we're going to do is our layering. We have spaghetti sauce. We're just going to put a spoonful in each of these trays. And now we're going to add a layer of lasagna noodles. And we're going to add a spoonful of ricotta cheese in each of these. And now we're going to sprinkle some mozzarella cheese. And then we're going to repeat. So we're going to stick these in the freezer overnight, and when they are frozen, we're going to pop them out like the soups and stick them in Ziploc bags. And then when you're ready to eat these, all you got to do is thaw it in the refrigerator for a few hours and preheat the oven to 375 Fahrenheit and bake it to 35 to 40 minutes. Then place under a broiler for 3 to 4 minutes. Super easy. These look delicious. So let's move on to the next thing.
Next, we're gonna make some taco rice casserole. So first of all, we're gonna saute some onions. I've got a cup of onions. And I'm gonna put a little bit of oil. We just wanna heat these up, cook these until they're a little bit soft. All right, these onions are starting to get translucent and they look pretty good. I'm gonna put in our pre-cooked meat. This is 2 pounds of ground meat. And really, I just want to get this warmed back up, warmed all the way through. Then I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of taco seasoning and 3/4 of a cup water. And stir this around to absorb all that. Now we can add our other ingredients. We've got 2 cups of corn, 2 cans of Rotel tomatoes, and 2 cans of black beans. Ooh, the skillet's getting full. So I want to be careful when I'm mixing them. But I just want to make sure they're mixed and incorporated all together. And this is really similar to our filling for the stuffed peppers. This looks delicious. Time to assemble these taco casseroles. I've got 2 of these 9x13 casserole dishes that are lidded. You can use disposable ones. Again, like Lance said earlier, if you're gonna use the glass ones, it's great, but just make sure they thaw completely before you're putting them in the oven so there's not this huge temperature drop. So I have 4 cups of rice. I'm gonna use 2 cups in one and 2 cups in the other. And this is pre-cooked rice. And just spread it on the bottom. Then I'm gonna put half of this mixture in one and half in the other. Then I have 3 cups of cheddar cheese, same deal. I'm gonna put half of it on one and the other half on the other. And then I'm gonna let them cool a little bit before I cover them and put them in the freezer. These will bake with foil, so I'm gonna go ahead and cover them with foil here. And then I can put the lids over top of the foil. This will also give me something easy to write the instructions on. So the instructions are thaw and 40 minutes at 350 degrees, remove foil, and cook an additional 5 to 10 minutes till the cheese is brown. And then our lid just snaps right on over top of that. And I probably still will put a label on this because you can't really see through this to see what it is. And that is 2 more family dinners for our freezer meals. On to the next one. All right, my stuffed peppers are ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and put the stickers on the bags. I'm gonna put these in 2 separate bags because we ended up adding extra peppers. So this will be 8 peppers per bag. And I think that that's plenty for us for a meal. So we're just gonna stick these peppers straight in here.
All right, here we are again, this time with creamy chicken Parmesan penne. Pasta, this is one of our freezer fits, and man, this almost feels like cheating. These are so easy. We've got the instructions printed off, we've collected our ingredients, we've got the stickers that go right on the bag. The only thing I'm gonna have to really stand here and do is cut this chicken down. So let's get started. All right, the first thing I'm gonna go ahead and do, just because it's easier, we've got our reusable gallon zipper bag that this is gonna go in, and we have our quick print labels that come right off of the Freezer Fit website. I'm gonna go ahead and label my bag while it's nice and flat. This has our cooking instructions on it, and the only thing we have to add is the date. All right, now we're going to stick it in our handy dandy little bag holder. Just having an extra set of hands, not required, but we find it useful. And that is going to be ready to start catching these ingredients. The first thing I'm going to do is cut up my chicken and get it in here. We're going to start with 2 pounds of skinless, boneless chicken. All right, so that just took us a few minutes to cut our chicken up, plus another minute to clean up and wipe down our workstation here. But this is the main ingredient in our recipe. So let's start going over and adding to our freezer bag the things that we're gonna have next. All right, we're gonna start with some heavy cream. This is gonna be 2 cups. Right at. I think there may be an ounce left in this jug. Ooh, this bag is gonna fill up fast. We'll see how this goes. Okay, next up, we're gonna use some chicken broth. We need 1 1/4 cups. Okay, next we're gonna add 1 full cup of shredded Parmesan cheese. And I piled it up a little bit on top just because a little extra cheese is always a good thing. And then we're gonna add 1/4 cup extra virgin olive oil, like that. Okay, next up we're doing a tablespoon of garlic powder, as well as a tablespoon of Italian seasoning. Next, it's going to call for 1 lemon, but not like dropping the whole lemon in, like juicing the lemon. And so we're going to use some lemon juice. For 1 lemon, we're going to use about 1 tablespoon. All right, next is going to be 1 teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, a 1/4 teaspoon of dried oregano, and then for the recipe in the bag today, 1/4 teaspoon of basil. Now we have dried basil from our garden still, so I'm going to use that. It just smells so much better when it came from your garden. We're going to use a 1/4 teaspoon today in the recipe itself. We're going to keep this handy along with our penne pasta, because when we pull this out of the freezer to cook it, we're going to use a lot more fresh basil, and the pasta will wait and cook when it's time to reheat. Okay, when it's time to cook, we'll pull this out of the freezer. We're just going to get a big skillet, put it on the stove, add a little bit of olive oil in the bottom. We're going to dump this whole bag in, and we're going to dump our pasta in. Now, the recipe calls for 3 cups of uncooked pasta. We are using, this is actually lentil penne. This is one of our Azure standard purchases, and there's a lot of benefits to doing things like this. We have found that we like it. It's gluten-free if that's something that you need. This is got protein because it's lentils, right? So this is a nice substitution. We will have this in the pantry on hand when it's time to cook. 3 cups straight into the skillet along with our mixture, and you're just going to cook it. Bring it to a boil. Let your chicken cook through roughly 15 to 20 minutes until you want to make sure the chicken is cooked through, and your pasta should be hopefully al dente. If you cook it too long, it might get a little soggy, but at least it'll be cooked. And so that part's going to be super simple. Then you're going to, last thing, add some more of your basil. It's going to be quite a bit. You're going to use a 1/4 cup, and that's almost what we've got. We've got half a cup in there. And that will be your last addition before you serve. And so all we have to do right now is mix this up a little bit, because all of our seasoning is just settled right on top of our bag. Hold on, we'll get another one coming up. All right, next up, we are in front of the stove again, front right burner, and we're gonna make some broccoli cheese soup. This is pretty quick and easy, especially when you've got the ingredients all ready to go. And then we're gonna go pour these into our super cubes and swap them out to our freezer bags like we do our other soups. So first thing we're gonna do is get our stove top burning. I have a 1/2 stick of butter, which is 4 tablespoons. We're gonna get it in and let it start melting. Okay, that's mostly melted. It's at least covered the bottom of our pot. We're gonna add 1/2 cup of chopped onions, or if you don't have them pre-prepared, that's about a 1/2 an onion. Okay, next we're gonna add about 2.5 to 3 cups of broccoli florets, and we're gonna also toss in here about 1 cup of shredded carrots. And we're gonna start by just sauteing this down so that everything gets nice and soft. This will just take 3 or 4 minutes. All right, you hear that sizzle? They've been going for 3 or 4 minutes. The carrots and the broccoli don't visually change very much, but the onions, when they lose the white and they start turning clear, almost transparent, then that lets us know we're ready to move on. So next we're gonna add 1 cup of heavy cream. We're gonna add 1 cup of whole milk. And we're gonna add 1.5 cups chicken broth. And we're just gonna stir this around for just a minute, just to mix everything together before we move on to the next step. Okay, with those just kind of blended together, this is a little different. Instead of starting with a roux, we're gonna take and we're gonna add a 1/4 cup of flour into the mixture that we've already got. So it's just, we're gonna use this to thicken it. We're also gonna add 1 1/2 teaspoon. We're gonna add a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. And then the recipe just calls for a pinch of red pepper flakes. I like red pepper flakes. I'm afraid that I would give a really big pinch. I'm gonna go ahead and do a 1/2 teaspoon of red pepper flakes as well. And now we're just gonna stir this, blend this together, and get that flour mixed in good so that the whole sauce, the whole soup starts to thicken. So really that's all we're looking for at this point. Right now it looks like a bowl of milk with chunks floating around in it. We just want it to thicken and be consistent like a soup. So this, I stepped away just to get kind of my area cleaned up and get some stuff in the sink, but I don't want to leave this very long. I want to keep stirring this. I don't want any of it to burn to the bottom, and I want to see that it's thickening. Okay, it's been right about 10 minutes and this looks good. I'm going to go ahead and cut the heat off. The last thing that we have is 2 cups of shredded cheddar, and all we're going to do is dump it in, stir it around. It'll take just a few seconds, a minute maybe, to melt in good. And if you're eating it now, this soup is ready to go. We're going to set it aside and let it cool. We're going to pour it into our super cube silicone molds and freeze it. But let me bring the camera in here and show you what this looks like before and while I add our cheddar. All right, rather than looking like milk with chunks floating in it, it's blended together really nice. That's the thickness that I like. It's going to thicken up a little more when we add cheese, and even a little more than that when we let it set and cool, since we're not serving it right away. So now we're just going to let this cool. We're going to move on to the next recipe, and then we'll come back and pour these into our super cube molds here in just a few minutes.
Next up is a super simple one, and this is beef pot pies. So the first thing you want to make sure you have is some pie crusts. You can make these pie crusts, you can buy these pie crusts. I went ahead and put my bottom pie crust in a pie pan. These are disposable, but you can use the regular one as long as it has a lid for the freezer. And then I'm going to mix the filling. I'm going to use a pound of mixed veggies, 1 pound of potatoes chopped, 1 pound of ground meat. I'm going to use 1 can of this Heinz gravy mix, but you can make your own gravy. That's totally fine. Half a teaspoon of thyme, half a teaspoon of oregano, half a teaspoon of pepper, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Then I'm going to mix this up all together. We did these in our first huge freezer meal video, and you can make a big batch. We did a big batch of 5 at once, and they were really one of our favorite meals from that freezer meal video. So we're making sure we have at least one of these in the freezer this time. All right, once you have that mixed really well, then you're gonna pour it in this pie pan on top of the crust. Then I'm gonna take the second crust, and I am just gonna mash it down and crimp those ends together so that I have this nice pot pie ready to go. And that's all there is to it. I'm sure there are more beautiful pie makers than I, but this one is quick, and I'm gonna put the lid on it. If it's gonna be a while until you make this, then you can put foil over top of it as well, just to add that extra protection from frostbite. And then I'm gonna label it. So to reheat this, you're gonna take it out of the freezer, thaw it overnight, and then you're gonna put it in the oven at 350 degrees for 45 minutes to an hour. What you're looking for is that crust to get golden brown and the gravy to get bubbly. And that's all there is to it. Let's move on. Michaela's got another one for us.
All right, so the next recipe we're doing is a super easy chicken parmesan casserole. So the first thing we're gonna do is spray this 9x13 baking pan with your preferred cooking spray. So now we're gonna add 5 cups of diced cooked chicken, 1 24-ounce jar of marinara sauce. Mix this around. 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning, half a teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Make sure it's spread evenly around the bottom. So now we're going to sprinkle our mozzarella cheese, and we need 2 cups. And now we're going to set this pan aside. First thing we're going to add to this bowl is 2 cups of panko breadcrumbs. And we're going to add 1 tablespoon of dried basil. And 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. I'm gonna mix this around with a fork. And when that's all mixed, we're going to add 3 tablespoons of olive oil. We're gonna toss this around with our fork until all of the breadcrumbs have oil on them. So also you have to put a cup of Parmesan cheese on the mozzarella layer of the actual casserole part. Forgot to do that, so I'm gonna do that before I sprinkle the breadcrumbs on. So just 1 cup of shredded Parmesan cheese over top. And we're just gonna sprinkle our breadcrumbs. So now we're just going to cover this up with our labeled lid. The reheating instructions are remove from freezer and allow them to thaw overnight in the refrigerator. Bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 25 to 30 minutes until bubbly and breadcrumbs are toasted golden brown. So this is done, and we're going to move on to the next thing. So we are back to our frozen lasagnas, and we're just going to stick 4 of these in our labeled bags. I have 2 labeled bags and 6 lasagnas. All right, so that is it, and we're done with the lasagna, so let's go to the next thing.
All right, we're back with our broccoli cheddar soup, and all we're gonna do is get it in our super cubes. All right, these will go to the freezer until it's time to move them into Ziploc bags and reuse our super cube molds.
All right, next up is something for our lunches. We're going to make some beef and bean burritos that we can reheat in the microwave real quick. So we are going to light our burner and take a half a cup of onions and saute them in a little bit of oil. And just like we did last time, we're gonna stir these until they're a little bit translucent. All right. We've been cooking these for a couple of minutes and they look perfect. Now I'm gonna add our meat. And this is 1.5 pounds of ground meat. And I just wanna get this nice and warmed up all the way through. Now I'm gonna add 8 ounces of tomato sauce, 1/4 cup of taco seasoning, and a few dashes of hot sauce, and mix that up really well. And that can just cook together for a minute or 2, and then we'll head over here and stuff our burritos. All right, this process is super easy. I'm gonna take 1 can of pinto beans and 1 can of refried beans and mix them together. And you're gonna take whatever size tortillas you want these to be. These are big burrito tortillas, but really you can do this with any size, your preference. And we're gonna take a spoonful of the bean mixture and then a spoonful of the mixture we just did on the stovetop, the beef mixture. And then I've got 2 cups of cheese here. This is cheddar, you can put any kind of cheese on, and I'm just sprinkling that on. I'm gonna fold the end and then roll them up just like you would any other burrito. Then I'm doing this, I'm gonna wrap them in foil. Now, I will say this, these we love to put in the microwave, but always take the foil off of them before you put them in the microwave. Public service announcement. Most of you know that, just in case you don't. We'll just put them over there. So let's go ahead and fill all the rest of our burritos. And really, you can just stick these in the microwave straight from frozen, just depending on the heat intensity of your microwave. It'll be different for every microwave. So start off with a couple minutes and then just keep going until it's your desired heatedness. And I'm gonna seal them in Ziploc baggies to keep in our freezer. This just helps us keep them organized. You can just stick them in the freezer, but this just helps us keep them from dropping down to the bottom and getting lost. So now we have 8 delicious, ready to go individual lunches.
All right, we're back again. This time we're doing a baked ziti. Now this is going to use 3 of these little 8x8 baking dishes, and that's going to give us 3 separate smaller meals. So this is a lot. So our initial prep is we're taking 24 ounces of cottage cheese. We're going to mix it in with 1 lemon that I have already zested and gotten ready. Doesn't make a whole lot of zest. But that's going to go in, and then we're going to add these 2 eggs. We're going to stir this up and just let it set to the side after we do our stove prep. This is going to be used when we layer our ziti into our baking dishes. So, all right, that looks like that's probably pretty good. Now the rest of this, we're going to move over to the stovetop and start our meat mixture first. All right, we're over here at the stove. I have a pot of water that I'm going to let start boiling because we're going to dump the ziti pasta in here in a little bit. It always takes a little while to get a big pot of water going. So I just turned the heat on. It's just water at this point. And then we're gonna start our meat mixture on about medium-high heat. I'm gonna start with a couple of tablespoons of oil just to get the bottom coated here. Now again, our meat was all pre-cooked for this. We're using mostly venison with a little beef mixed in. If you're cooking with just fresh raw beef, you're just going to want to brown it all the way through. This just needs to warm back up. So this will just take a little bit. All right, it's been a few minutes. Our meat is warmed back up and ready to go. If you're cooking from raw, again, just make sure you have it browned all the way through real good. So the next thing we're going to do is add 4 cloves of garlic. Now, cloves of garlic are all different sizes, and so that's not super precise. A clove usually yields about half to 1 teaspoon, so 4 cloves would be between 2 and 4 teaspoons. 1 tablespoon is 3 teaspoons, which is right in between. So that's going to be the perfect amount for us. The recipe also calls for 1 pound of mushrooms. Now, I love mushrooms. Christy's okay with mushrooms. The girls are not super excited about mushrooms. I'm not gonna make ziti and not have the mushrooms, but we're only using half a pound in today's recipe, and so we'll kind of ease back on that since I'm the only one that really likes them. It also calls for 2 cups of diced onions, and so like we've done with many things here, we're gonna add these in and just let them cook down. When the onions lose that white color, they get soft and clear, and the mushrooms will turn darker and get soft. It'll be easy to tell. Then we'll be ready to move on to the next thing. All right, while we're waiting on our onions and our mushrooms to cook down, I do have a boil over here in my pot of water. So we're gonna go ahead and put our ziti in. Just follow the instructions. We're not going to par cook these. Ziti is a denser noodle, and it'll do fine frozen. So I'm going to dump 2 bags, 2 pounds of ziti in here and let that start cooking. All right, these onions and mushrooms are getting real close. They're looking good. A couple more things before we add the tomatoes. Some red pepper flakes, and the recipe just says add to taste. That's another one I could easily get carried away because I love red pepper. I'm going to try to go easy on it. And then we're going to do 2 teaspoons of oregano. So I'm going to get those in first. Next, we're gonna add in 2 28-ounce cans of diced tomatoes. A good boil going over here. And so they only need about 6 more minutes, and we will pull them off. In the meantime, I'm just stirring this around. All we're doing right now is heating up, warming up the tomatoes that we just added, and we are almost ready to go back and start compiling our dishes. Okay, we drained our pasta. All of our ingredients are here ready to go. I'm going to dump this into our big pot here. All right, now we're back. This is where it all comes together. We're going to be layering this down almost like a lasagna, but no lasagna noodles. Our ziti pasta noodles are in here ready to go. So the recipe says to divide out 1/6 of what's in the pot. Since we've got 3 pans, that would be half of each pan. A layer of meat and noodles, a layer of our cottage cheese mixture, a layer of cheese, then a second layer meat noodles, layer cottage cheese, mixture, layer of cheese. We're gonna get started with layer 1. Okay, now we're gonna do a layer of our cottage cheese mixture. I can hear outside the house, our neighbor John is a truck driver. I hear his big truck coming home for the day. Shout out to John. Appreciate our truck drivers keeping stuff moving around the country for us, keeping our store shelves stocked and all the stuff that we need to carry on with. All right, let's do some provolone. If you were eating these right away, we would take these, put them in the oven at 350 for about 20 minutes. We just cooked everything. Most of it is still hot and ready to go, but that'll give it a chance to melt this cheese, blend everything together. Since we're not doing that, we're going to be putting them in the freezer. We're going to take them out and we're going to set the oven to 350. We're going to put it in covered for an hour, and then we're going to take it out, uncover it, put it back in for about 15 minutes. You just want to make sure that the sauce in there is giving you a good boil, a good rumble, and everything will be good to go. All right, there's 1 layer down. Now let's start layer 2. And there we have it, 4 ziti pasta dishes, almost ready to go. I'm gonna wrap these in foil. We're gonna put our instructions on, and then these are ready to go to the freezer.
One last freezer meal, but stick around because we are going to pull out everything we've been working on for the past couple days and get an idea of really how much we've done. This is freezer meal chicken enchiladas, and this one is delicious and fairly simple. We're going to take 2 cups of our cooked chicken, half a cup of enchilada sauce, half a cup of shredded cheddar cheese, half a cup of sour cream, a quarter of a cup of cilantro that we pulled from our fresh herb garden indoors, and 1 4-ounce can of diced green chilies. And this is our mix for the inside, and we're gonna just stir this up really well. Then we want 12 6-inch tortillas. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this filling and we're gonna put it in here. We're gonna wrap it up and put the seam side down in a 9x13 pan. And you're just gonna keep going and fill this pan with these enchiladas. All right, and I filled 10, which is great for this because 10 can fit easily inside one dish. I have 8 going this way, and then I have 2 stuck in the side here. And now I'm just gonna cover these with the rest of my enchilada sauce that I have. And this will, you can put the enchilada sauce on the bottom before you put these in there, but I find it just naturally seeps down in there, so it's not a necessary step. And then I'm gonna take my cheese and I'm just gonna cover this whole thing with cheese. This is about 2 cups of cheese that I'm putting on top. And that's really all there is to it. I am going to put a layer of foil because these are going to be baked with foil on them. So I'll put a layer of foil on here. And then I'm gonna put my lid with my instructions. Now the instructions for these, I put a sticker, it says thaw, and then we're gonna bake this at 375 for about 30 minutes, and then take the foil off and bake for 5 to 10 more until that cheese is nice and brown. Whew! And that is it. It's been a long few days. We're all pretty exhausted, but this is gonna pay off hugely in the coming months. So let's go ahead and let's grab everything we've done so far so we can show you our hard work for this week and we can celebrate. Okay, here we are. We have made 30 recipes. Most of these recipes made more than 1 serving, and we've got individual meals, we've got family dinners, we've got sides, we've got desserts, all sorts of delicious things ready to go in our freezer so that we're ready to go for the spring when it gets super busy. So, are y'all glad to be done?
Yes.
Yes. It makes for a really long few days, but it's like anything else, putting in that work ahead of time, really to plan and to prep, serves you well in the long run. And this is gonna save us hours and hours and hours and lots of money.
And this was a great time to do it because it's been so cold. We haven't been going anywhere. We've been doing very little outside except changing animals' waters over and over and over. And so, you know, instead of just sitting around staring at the TV for the last few days, we have been putting our time prepping meals, and it's been great.
Yep. What are you most excited about eating?
Me?
Yes.
The creamy Parmesan chicken penne that I made looked really good. The peppers, the stuffed peppers that you made for the air fryer, I'm excited about. And actually the soup that I just did, I wasn't as excited when I saw it on the list of stuff. Oh, it's, what's the
broccoli cheddar?
Cheesy, yeah, broccoli cheddar. But when I was stirring it, I wanted to just dive in right then. So that's going to be one of the first soups that I grab, I think.
How about you, MJ?
This and this and this and this.
That's all the snacks. Yeah. Okay. The pot pie. Okay. And the pizzas. But yeah, she does banana bread and the chocolate chip cookies, and the breadsticks.
And lasagnas.
Oh, the lasagnas look good too. But Taylor couldn't be with us because she, if you notice, she dropped out halfway through this video because she came down with a really bad cold. So she is away from our food right now. But hopefully she'll be on the mend in a day or so. She'll be fine. But that's why she's not with us right now. But I know she would say the potato soup. That's what she would say. I'm excited about the peppers and the gumbo, the cube steak with the gravy also.
I think Taylor would also say the beef and bean burritos that you
Oh yeah, that was a special request from her because she likes to eat those for lunch when we're doing school. They're really easy, and yep. That when we were planning our freezer meal, she was like, you have to do some more of those beef and bean burritos.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a long few days. We've put in a lot of work. Hopefully you got some great ideas for some recipes that you would like to try, or at least some motivation to spend a day or two putting things back and making it easier on you over the next few months. If you're not a subscriber, we would love for you to hit that subscribe button. We've got lots of things going on. Sometimes it's right here in the kitchen. Sometimes it's outside with our animals. We've got new projects for this year we'd like you to follow along with us on. And hit that like button. Leave us a comment. What are your favorite meals to have ready in the freezer that you can just pull out and warm up? Maybe there's a recipe we haven't tried yet, and we will take our turn giving that a try one of these days. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful day.